Hey guys, VaulSC here, hope that you are doing well. In this video, we are going to be taking a look at the new rules for Conquest, the Last Argument of Kings, which dropped on the Army Builder app officially today. So I thought I'd just celebrate that by going through each individual faction and trying to create some kind of new army list that wasn't possible before. And in the process of doing that, I'll have a lot to say about the rules changes and give you my thoughts without going into every single rules change and making like multiple army lists for each of the different variations that are now possible. We're just going to be focusing on some of the things that I felt were interesting, and hopefully that'll be an entertaining video for you to follow along with, really. As always, when you are reviewing something which has a bit of diversity and complexity, your response and your thoughts and your review itself ought to have some diversity and complexity to it. I don't want people going away from this and having the takeaway that I hate everything and the new changes are terrible. I also don't want people to come away thinking that everything's amazing and I just love Parabellum and they are the best. And neither do I want people to coming away saying, oh, VaulSC was very neutral about it. In reality, you actually have to look at some of the individual responses to individual things. It's a mixed bag. There is a lot to say, some good, some bad, some neutral. Try not to come up with an overall pattern and just dumb it down and simplify it. There is just a bit more to it than that, okay? So, just some general thoughts. I'm glad that we have a new patch. I'm glad that they are moving in a new direction. I'm not happy with everything. It does seem clear that they have overlooked some stuff, and I don't know how well they've play-tested certain things, but some people are talking about the new Thunder Riders. Somehow they've come through at Defense 4. We'll talk about that soon. In addition to having the amazing threat range, and they can be Brutal 3 now, and you can give them Hardened, and they are less expensive. It feels almost like we're swapping the old broken slingers for the new broken Thunder Riders, and Wadroon is still right at the top. But I believe that if they come to their senses and just hotfix that a little bit, then we've got a reasonably fair faction in our hands. With city-states, previously before this patch, the Talos and the Chariots were too powerful, they were a bit unfair, and they were making city-states really rely on those two things. And I do like the fact that they've brought those two pieces down towards the sort of the median, the middle ground. Without, flipping them in the other direction and making them terrible, but they are still a little bit too powerful. So I feel like if they fix the obviously unfair things in Wadroon and make no further changes to city-states, we've probably got city-states as the #1 faction right now, is my feeling. Like, I haven't really had the chance to talk to a lot of really good players and really get that analysis and that prognosis for the near future, but that's just sort of my gut reaction, which I'm sharing to you right now. It's just like a bit of chit-chat, right? So without really rambling for too much longer, let's go to the brand new Army Builder and we'll just go through it, and we're just going to build some random lists starting with 100 Kingdoms. So what we've found out here is that we do not have the full new rules for all of the new stuff. So I was hoping to see Crusaders and the new Sicarii and Archangel, etc. with their rules listed, but unfortunately we've only got a very minimalistic update to 100 Kingdoms, which is annoying. Like, they've had 6 months. Come on, guys. You can at least put something in there more than what you've done. So all we really got was as follows. The Priority Commander can now actually take a heirloom without needing the long lineage mastery. I think that Parabellum have come to their senses on that. It's a lot more intuitive now. I think previously they didn't want to give him the Oliphant's Roar upgrade outright because they felt like it would be too powerful, but because they've power crept everything else in the game, you look at Thunder Riders now and go, okay, the Crimson Tower, nothing compared to that, so let's let them have something there. So this is the list that I'm going to be playing in my upcoming game this weekend. Is I'll take 1 unit of Crimson Tower, the meme unit, the Lance Bus of 5 Crimson Tower with the Priority Commander Warlord, Oliphant's Roar. I still think you're better off actually just going with the eccentric fighting style and 2 units of Seal Temple, 2 units of Ashen Dawn. But this is what I'm going to be playing just for the lols. This unit, I think there's just too many eggs in one basket, but it's slightly cheaper now, so you do have that. Order of the Ashen Dawn, slightly less expensive, but they're only attacks 5. That's fine. I think it's still fine to take 1 unit of 3 in this context. I believe you can't actually add any more more stands in there, so there is that. And with 780 points spent on this warband, I think it's fine to make the Pirate Commander your Warlord. The other thing that's a little bit new is the Imperial Officer can now take Steel Legion as mainstays. I just didn't think that was a particularly significant change. It does make Steel Legion a little bit more relevant, but the takeaway is that you still have all of these good mainstays here, and taking Men-at-Arms, Crossbowmen especially, are really, really useful. So 100 Kingdoms get by without having to use the setup, and being able to take 2 units of Hunter Cadre and Steel Legion together isn't exactly wow, you know? But still, I'll be running it just for the sake of it being new, and I'm just really hoping that they give 100 Kingdoms a bit more of an overhaul, just to make units like Militia and Militia Bowmen a bit more interesting, and just opening up a bit more possibilities with the warbands. But this is what I'm going to run this weekend. Steel Legion could just be the min units. They still need a standard bearer just because they kind of want the charge. They're still quite flimsy, and we don't need to invest many points into the officers, so I think it's fine just to have the Bastion and Double Time on them, since they're not going to be using a Drill Master, just a bit too expensive. Relentless Drill doesn't really net us anything, but with this kind of warband, you have the Hunter Cadre, which are obviously very helpful against all of the monsters that are going to be running around, what with, you know, your Quattles and your, all your Jotnar warbands these days with the new Jotnar character. So Hunter Cadre, I think, are fine at the moment, and Steel Legion, they could do with a bit of screening, but hey, even if you get trounced by a unit of Thunder Riders, if you've got a unit like this ready to countercharge, that will still be helpful. And then we're going to go over to the Chapter Mage. She can take the cheap and nasty stuff. I personally own 2 units of Crossbowmen now, and I want the Men-at-Arms just for the medium level scoring. Unfortunately, with this setup, you've got 4 heavy units and only 1 flank, so your army's going to come on a bit late, so good to have a bit of early presence there with the Men-at-Arms, which the Imperial Officer can quite rightly put Vanguard onto before you have to spread the Vanguard out over the Steel Legion. Anyway, we're just going to go straight for School of Fire. I just don't feel like the other schools have been buffed enough, and of course we've already used our 2 Warlord picks, so taking School of Water is not really going to be worth it at this point. I think School of Air, there is an argument for it, because if you take Kiss Farewell, that does mean that you can sort of stay at long range, 18 inches, and you don't have to come in for the fire shot, and it means you don't actually have to take focused. But with School of Fire, you've got better armor, blasting potential. I suppose another build you could go without focused is just go straight back to School of Air, actually. And you could find something else to do with your spare 15 points. So maybe the Prior Commander over here has something you want to add to him, like Disorienting Strikes, or probably more likely you want to maybe get rid of a Standard Bearer here and add Drill Master to one of your units here. Or something on this guy. I don't know, maybe Marksmanship and put him in a unit of Hunter Cadre. Or is there anything that he can realistically use? Caliburn, unlikely. Overall, I think it's probably better that we do have the hyper-offensive School of Fire, short-range kind of mage going on, and that brings us to 2,000 points. So not very dissimilar to what we were playing previously, but I'm going to bring it. We've got the Steel Legion going in there. I just hope that they bring out the rules for the Crusaders soon and give the Theist Priest a bit of a revamp on a Supremacy, with the Sakai being available as well, so we can look at some really cool infantry lists. On to other things. So the Spires also didn't get a massive shake-up. I think that what I'm going to sort of explore here is probably Directorate Underspire. We'll go Directorate for now with the Biomancer Warlord and the Force-Grown drones. I know that Desolation drones did get an update, so let's just have a quick look at them. Barrage 3, range 14, and Reprocessing Agents. Okay, so after you've hit them with that, they get -1 defense. So with the range 14 there, Deadly Shot, that's nice. Volley 2, you're probably going to get that to work. Lethal Demise doesn't do morale anymore, which is interesting. And Standard Bearer, I doubt they need that. So we want a reasonably big unit of Force-Grown drones as always. No Catabolic. No, actually, no, that's changed, hasn't it? So 8 hits. 20 points, I don't feel like I love the idea, but let's go to mutations. I think we still want Degenerative Order, because even though Lethal Demise doesn't do as much, it's still quite a useful ability, and Cascading Degeneration obviously has changed a bit. Do we want Aura of Death 8? I guess that means you can keep the frontage quite low, but still, it's not a lot of Aura of Death, so I don't know how important that is. I would normally want Master of Flesh, though, just for a little bit more Biomancy stuff, or Flesh Carver's pretty good, too. And then the Siegebreaker, it's possible to take the Siegebreaker in this warband, so you could go with a couple of them. I think 2 of them is actually kind of cool in Directorate, because you're going to be wanting to use the Burnout a fair bit, and there are going to be some Biomancies you're going to be able to use on these boys. At 210 points, they're also not bad. There is the new Abomination model, which looks kind of cool, but I still don't like his rules enough to want to go with that. And then I'm also looking at what do we got here? Probably want to get the Ferromancer at some point. Here he is here, so we want to put him in. Actually, we want to take 2 units of Strix and put him in the Brute Drones. So if we take a big unit of Brute Drones for this Ferromancer, he obviously has the -1 defense, and you might be able to stack that with Desolation Drones now, which is kind of cool. And then lastly, we'll see if we can fit in the Prideborn with 1 unit of Avatara. And I don't think we can take the Centaur Avatar unless we drop something, so maybe it's going to be 1 unit of Strix, and then you can use the 50 points to give this guy something useful. Marksman variant, so that's Barrage, Arcing Fire. I think there was something you can grab in here like this one. Does he already have Deadly Shot? I think he already does. So over here, I think there is a couple of upgrades you can pop in to make this guy a little bit more useful. And we don't need, or we do need a Standard Bearer there, so that's going to give us 40 points remaining. So I think with your additional 40 points, you can probably find something to add to the Ferromancer or the Prideborn there. But just in general, what this list does is it has several really good burnout targets. Strix are always good for that, but so are the Brute Drones with the -1 defense for the Ferromancer. Avatar are amazing with burnout, but especially these guys, since they don't really care about the wounds from decay that badly. But getting the buff to speed and clash on your smite attacks is pretty important. Cool, and obviously with your Force-grown drones, you can still make them scoring, so that's going to be quite useful with a Biomancer Warlord. So I think this kind of setup is kind of fun for the new spies, but other than that, not too many changes. Let's have a look at Dweghom now. What I'm going to do here is, rather than exploring the changes to Thanes and to Magma Forge, which honestly aren't particularly exciting, I'm just going to quickly build the army list that I personally have the models available for. So Steel Forge still attacks 4 by the looks with +2 clash. I think that's still worth taking. I think the Fireforge still probably not worth adding any upgrades to them at just a 3-stand unit, but the Steel Shaper Warlord has proven to be pretty awesome. I don't really feel like we need any items on him, especially with the changes to Aura of Death not really mattering that much. But if we go over to the Keroueg, I can take quite a lot of initiates here. We can always drop them down to 5 stands if needed, but I still think that Flaming Oratory is very good on them. And the new version of the Flame Berserkers, Aura of Death 4, I mean, they still pump out Aura of Death 4 when reduced to 1 stand, but in general, this is not that serious. I think they came down in points a little bit. But in general, a good early game unit, especially when you're putting Rancor on them, right? So then we come over to the Sorcerers, and again, I'm building an army list based on the miniatures that I have, not really on what's optimal. So if I go and just take your classic Fire Sorcerer, the Automata are now actually buffed at attack 6, which I really like, because they were kind of underperforming before. Aura of Death obviously is not what it was, but it doesn't matter. That's not really what was netting you the damage. Really what you want is the movement 7 plus fluid formation to get you across the field. And having attack 6 is a lot more reliable now for the damage. And then you take 1 more Sorcerer with the Ballistae and the Drake. You want to put Mastery Hellbringer on him and give him Graft to Fire, since he's going to be doing a lot of work. from the big beasts. Always like Graft of Fire, put them on the mount, and we're at exactly 2,000 points. Note that the Hold Warriors, they were previously like the slowpokes of the army that showed up last and took ages to get into a zone, but they've got Vanguard now for free, which is really helpful. I really quite like that. So this is the list that I play. I could drop one initiate here and get a fair bit more on one of the characters, but I just don't really feel the need. I'll probably practice this list next time I have an opportunity. Overall, though, it is disappointing that they still haven't really given Dweghom a rework, in the sense that the Tempered Creed is still much better than Ardent Creed, and the whole Rhaeg is still an absolutely boring warlord. If we go over to the Rhaeg and put them in the Thanes, it's like, oh, you know, they have changed the points and stuff around a little bit, but they're just not an interesting unit, right? It's still a case of usually just taking the initiates, and the Dragon Slayers are still the same points as the Ironclad Drake. They still haven't fixed that. It is disappointing, honestly. They've had 6 months. Surely they could sort out this supremacy ability, but they haven't. Not really good enough, in my opinion. Now, Nords have had a big shakeup, so I have no idea really what the best Nords list is at the moment. The Jotnar Sider is in there. I just feel like the points you invest into the guy is pretty hefty. Like, that's a lot of points, but he is quite strong. If I go with a Volva Warlord, then she's just not really helping these guys out with their stats that much. Isn't it just infantry? Let's just have a look. All right, so it will affect Jotnars. Okay, so it won't affect the Sea Jotnar. He's already Evasion 2. The Mountain Jotnar will go to E1, and the Jotnar side is already E2. So it's not really a great supremacy, honestly, for the Volva. So maybe she doesn't need to be the Warlord. But then again, being able to cast it onto stuff that is in zones is pretty good too. Let's go and have a look at the Koningir. So what if we make the Koningir, we could take the Bow Chosen, and we can take the new Steel Chosen, and we could put him in the Steel Chosen, and we could give him something that helps his attacks, like Cleave 2 is pretty good, and Parry. He's already Cleave 1. I'm just not too sure how badly we'll need to beef him up there. What about Godspear? Okay, that's the one I just looked at. Impact 2, +2 attacks, die fighting. It's quite a lot for 30 points. And this is clash or dual action. Okay, so that could be good as well. Might as well just leave that off for a sec. The main thing I wanted to look at, obviously, in the new Nords is the new Savage. So if we put the Jarl into the Ulfednar and the Bearsarks, you can grab the Savage on them. How close are we to hitting the points cap at this point? All right, so I'm almost tempted to make the Bearsarks just a little bit bigger so that the Jarl can go in the Bearsarks, and then they've got a really massive threat there with a reformed charge clash or a move charge clash. Now, the Jarl's raid tactics, all mortals get the tribal tactics. I don't know how good a synergy that is when you've got the Jotnar in there as well. So what about Ruler of Mannheim? All right, so when an enemy regiment's engaged, other friendly regiments add +2 to the charge distance, always active. So that's actually quite helpful because these Jotnars are going to want a little bit of extra speed to get their really imperative charge off. So that's kind of nice. And same with these guys as well, as you're wanting to out-threat your opponents. We are on 6 regiments. I love how the Jotnar Sider is actually an additional thing rather than a character inside of a regiment. So realistically, all we need to do now is just chalk up a few additional things here to get a bit more meat on the table. Maybe I'll take that down a peg, and then we can afford another unit of raiders, and these guys can probably have captains in them. So that does give you much better scoring potential and screening potential with your raiders. So they'll help these guys get into close combat. We haven't been able to afford any trove finds here, and the Steel Chosen might not be necessary given all of the other fighting potential you have here. It might be better to go with 2 units of Bow Chosen, to be honest. But this is just a bit of a glimpse at how different Nords are now. You're not likely to see people go and take just pure like Bow Chosen and Trolls like we did before. So if you go Blooded and just go Trolls, it's just not really the same kind of build because you're not really as easily getting all of your light scoring and your opportunists happening, etc., etc. The rules don't quite support that anymore. Probably should talk a little bit about the Golter as well. Like, you can have the Varga Lord with the Golter now. I just don't know how amazing this is yet. It's probably better than I'm giving credit for, but I haven't had time to really analyze and study this kind of warband. It doesn't look wonderful considering all the other cool stuff that the other factions can do. If you're really wanting to go early game, the Vargalord and the Werewolves is pretty good. I just don't know what's really changed about this to the extent that it's not suffering the same problems it was in the previous patch. These guys are a bit tougher, but still you're dealing with Resolve 3 and 4 wounds, which, and Defense 3 only. That's not great. I almost feel like having the +1 evasion from the Volva and the Shaman is going to be quite good there as well. So yeah, I don't know. I'm more attracted to the Jotnar's build and a bit of spell casting and probably including some Bow Chosen in there at the end of the day. They're a bit of a mystery. Okay, on to the Wadroon. So this is where things get a bit silly, and I really hope they come and hotfix this, but Thunder Chieftain and Thunder Riders is the obvious thing at the moment. You make him the Warlord. That will allow him to go Conquest, and the new rules for Chance that for Conquest, with just 2 markers, you can get +2 March, and obviously the +2 Evasion could be quite helpful in some situations also. But with +2 March, you are basically activating your Chief and the Thunder Riders, marching 8 inches, and then charging 11 with your rule over here that gives them the +5. So 8 + 11 is, 19? And that's a guaranteed charge from 19 inches away. So long as you do that, you're getting Brutal 3 on your, 16 impact hits. And of course, they've got Shock from the Thunder Chieftain's Warband Warlord ability. They lose the morale checks on the tramples, but honestly, they don't need it. They've even got Line Breaker. So if you attack a unit of Household Knights, they go to defense 0. And they still have flank, which is just nutty. So this needs a nerf considering how cheap it is. I can't believe that's a thing. New Winglord Predator is pretty cool. I do like the fact that this is a scoring unit and it's extremely fast, and you've got effectively a character that can unlock a regiment here without the character having to go into one of these other regiments. He's on his own regiment here. Predatory Shriek is actually quite helpful because you might be trying to pick on a weak unit that's only at Clash, that Resolve 3, for example, and going up to Terrifying is very, very helpful. And also if you go and you end up taking an Apex Predator, that is a Speaker's role as well. So if we go Predatory thing, then the I think he gives, let's have a look here. The character and all friendly speakers monsters regiments gain predatory chance. So that's what allows the Apex Predator to do it. So it goes up to Terrifying 3, which is actually kind of nasty. All right, Warband Colts doesn't really matter too much what we pick here. I'm considering Death generally because Death gives Untouchable, and everything else is not quite as helpful as Untouchable. So Famine for the charge distance, I just don't feel like you need it as much. And Cleave 1, that's not Cleave +1, it is just Cleave 1. So anything that already has Cleave is not going to benefit from it as much. Untouchable, though, is quite nice, especially on Thunder Riders that have already made it in there with Defense 4. But for the Chief Conquest especially, because you're wanting to charge with these guys. And then what else do you want on the Warband? Well, the Sign of Conquest, despite what I said in my previous video, actually has a triple activation Conquest unit here. They are wound 6 instead of 7, but I still think that they are very, very, very good. And his spell list is obviously still very, very, very good. So if we just grab a Death Cult here and add in a couple of Blooded for more scoring potential, we come up to 1980, and all we really need to do is add in another 20 points. That is inevitably going to be the Mastery's Resilience for Hardened 1. If you want to shave some more points off somewhere, you could give this guy Beads of Death, which you probably want to do. But already we've got a list with 8 regiments plus the Wing Lord. So you've got 9 entities floating around there, and they are extremely fast. The Thunder Riders are charging from an extremely long range with incredible damage potential, and then suddenly they're extremely tough as well. Defense 4 Hardened 1, 6 wounds. It's like, what? And the Winglord Predator has got plenty of opportunities to pick away at things and sort of just hold it at the back, or camp an objective, or steal an enemy objective on their side of the table, on scenarios like grind them down or divide and conquer or fall on hope. So that's quite nasty. So this Raptor Riders unit ought to be a hunting pack unit. Definitely prefer that, which frees up even more points to give this guy some really cool artifacts, just stuff that's going to help him out here. Blooded could turn into something else, maybe a monster of some kind, and then you can get Beads of Death in here. So that's sort of looking like what I would play test. There are, of course, there's still opportunities to go for the basic Predator. Slingers, Kiss of the Dinosaur, very strong. I don't know about the Mounted Predator. The Matriarch Queen, she still does healing, and there is the ability to give your Braves the Blessed ability, so that's something I'll look into. But this overall kind of setup looks like it's a bit too strong right now. They do need to nerf the Thunder Riders, and then Woodrone will be fine. So there's plenty more you can do in there. Old Dominion, I asked for them to be nerfed, and they have been nerfed. Kerry's got put in their place, thank goodness. Kerry's, I think, are fine now, but I think the interesting build that I'm looking at right now is the Fallen Divinity, now that you can allow it to die and the dark power points will go from the Pantheon into the regular pool. So I like just the Untouchable on the Fallen Divinity. Some people like to also take Kentark, but I think Untouchable is fine. The new Centaurs, which do the shooting, are pretty good. They don't need the Memories of Old that much, but we are going to introduce a few things into the list which can benefit from Memories of Old if the Fallen Divinity dies. So you always want your basic Legionnaires, which they have not nerfed, which I'm annoyed about. They're still ridiculously good. So then we'll take the Varangian Guards over here, and we'll take a decent unit of them. With the Standard Bearer, that's fine. They do like the charge. No Princeps option anymore. But the Auxiliarch, what we can do is we can take the new Legio Primigenia, and that allows you to count the regiment as one power tier higher. We can't get to tier 4 because the Auxiliarch's not going to be the Warlord in this list, but the cool thing here is that while all of the points are going to the Fallen Divinity, you can still go to tier 2. But if she dies and you put points into the other pool, then you can have tier 3 Varangian Guards, which is still kind of useful. For the third warband, I still think the Hierodeacon, for actually getting the points in the first place, is nice. Cultists to get a really good turn 1 deployment with straight into Dark Supplication is really, really good there. And then I think, I don't know if the Bucephaloi have been buffed a great deal. Let's have a look at them. 220, they still don't have Hardened. Brutal Impact +1's not particularly useful. So I think we still want to be going for Cannifors. And then it's just a matter of adding a few more regiments in here. I think on this side we'll probably take one unit of Legionnaires here, add the free Standard Bearer, and we've still got enough points to go for a second unit of Cannifors. And there's points left over, which I might use to make this a really big unit of Varangian Guards. And this guy can then take something like War of Malice or Kentark. Don't know about that. Don't know about this. I don't think duels have been changed yet. So I think if he can take multiple magic items here, yep, that's fine. So we got 30 more points to spend. I guess I could go back up here. No, that's already been used. So what would we add to this list? Maybe drop something else down and put more Cannifors in there, or we could put put a bit of an item on this guy. Dark Shepherd, no, we're not going to be using that. Devoted to Hazelia, I guess we could use that. Fun times. There's also the new Athenatoi, by the way. I don't know if we'd be wanting to use that, but I suppose you could look at Athenatoi in this context where you've got them in this warband. It's just that the Athenatoi still don't seem wonderful. The Memories of Old is just not very interesting, and although you've got Tenacious 1, which is nice, 6 attacks, flurry, but no cleave could leave them in a bit of a problematic spot, and just wounds forward, D2 evasion 1 isn't exactly that impressive. So I think they still need a little bit of help there. So maybe in this sort of context, you just go with 4 Varangians there, and you take another unit of Varangian Guards, and you are fine. I guess the Auxiliarch goes in one of them, and you've still got 40 points left over. You can put another officer in here, so another Optio if you like. And just got 25 points for some Dark Blessings. Maybe one of these ones. Oh, Gladiator's awesome. So Gladiator works. So he's a real beat stick now. And the idea here is that you throw the Fallen Divinity into combat and you allow her to get into a situation where she might die. Because if she does die, then you can at least have, your Varangians getting up to tier 3, and your Canaphores can use Memories of Old. I mean, they don't particularly need it, but it's nice. And the Kerikers don't really rely on it that much. I guess you could put in something else that relies on Memories of Old a bit more. Another approach, I suppose, is the Strategos, although I don't really like the Strategos on horse because you need to be at tier 2 for Dark Power quite quickly. So there is that. The other route, I suppose, you can go down is having the Archimandrite, who sort of normally does need tier 2. Let me just check. Can you take this banner on the Archimandrite? Let's have a look. So we've got the new Carries in there, and we've got the new Moroi in there, and we've got a unit of Legionnaires. So how does that look? Praetorians, we've got +2 there. We take the Standard Bearer, and we want the Dark Cenotaph, actually, for the power tokens. That's lovely. Over here, Dark Blessings, Unholy Mastery, nope. Treasures, we got that. Okay, so making the Praetorians tier 2 is useful because you want to use their Bastion, and then if the Fallen Divinity dies, you can actually Memories of Old up to tier 3 with it. That's looking pretty cool. My concern here is that the Keres are going to stay at tier 1 for a while unless the Archimandrite is dishing out Blasphemous Power into them. So there is that problem. Let's see what else we can do. So Unholy Mastery, I think this could be helpful, actually, because then you're going to get some hits with Devout onto the Keres where you get Blasphemous Power onto them and you get a second spell which you can cast onto something else like to heal. So that's quite cool. The new Moroi and Keres get a free spellcasting action instead of the really stupid Insanity buff where you get an additional wound per Dark Power level when they roll a 6, which just wasn't really nice. So I think Old Dominion are a lot fairer now, and I look forward to what people can come up with. I think that's still very scary, and the Fallen Divinity is very, very powerful. I'll be interested to see how she performs, and if somebody was playing a list like this, I would still be quite intimidated about facing it, even with the powered down carries. I don't know if Bone Golems are now better than Moroi or not. I suspect they are still better. I mean, Aura of Death 5, previously it was like Aura of Death 2, +1 for each Dark Memories of Old you do. So now, if you're at tier 3, you hit them and you're on AOD 8, and then you go up to like 11, I think it is. So they can still do quite a lot of damage with Aura of Death there. And I suppose the thing about this is that if you reduce them down to like 1 stand of Bone Golems remaining and then they use their Memories of Old, they can still hit you with Aura of Death 8, which does make a bit of a mess. All right, moving on to City-States. Now this is... yeah, it feels like our strongest faction now that they haven't really reduced Chariots and Talos by that much. So if you go to Polymarch, you take the classic Agema, put in an extra stand there, and you take the Andromachos. And I don't know about the Sacred Band veterans. I haven't really analyzed them to determine whether I like them enough yet. But if you take him as the Warlord plus Aristia, you've got a very strong regiment which has been tried and tested. With the Fluid Formation and the very long-range Aristia charge, you're looking really good. Ideally, you'd want to also put the Blades of Achilles there if we can afford it. You'd also want to grab a Telos. These guys have been nerfed a little bit, but overall I think that they are still the role that you want to take. Then we want the Aristarch. I'm going to put in a couple of units of Selenoi here. And we're going to go with all of the Chariots. And what we can do now, the Chariots are thankfully only 2 per restricted slot, which helps to balance them a lot. They really needed that, but I still think that they are probably the most effective thing in the game for hanging back and scoring and still playing a battlefield role. And the important thing is that they give you so many cards to activate with, plus your strategic stack, so your opponent is always in a position where you'll still do well if you get the first activation in the turn by winning Supremacy, but you're always going to have a couple of cards left to play after they've run out of cards, allowing you to move with your your Talos or your Agema without them retaliating for that particular turn, which I find very, very strong. The other character which is quite good is the Mechanist. One way you can go here is go Thorakites plus Telos, because then these guys can benefit from torque, which makes them heavy. They can then score, so you've still got plenty of scoring. I almost feel like it's not really needed with the amount of Scorpions you got in there. So the other really good build is the Clockwork Hoplites, which are also very, very strong. These guys can benefit from some of the stuff we've got here. You could make him the Warlord for the benefits here rather than the Polymarch, and unfortunately we can't quite afford the second Telos in this list, so what you could do is go with one of these other options. I see that the Hephaestion has had a little bit of a change, only a very small one I believe it was. And then you can afford everything else there. So this kind of setup is what I'm kind of worried about facing for the next 6 months, is just like the same kind of style here. We're not bothering with any Minotaurs or Hoplites or anything like that. Even the new Phalangites, which have been buffed, aren't really as fearsome as a lot of this stuff. Sacred Band might make an appearance in some of these lists, even as auxiliaries, but it's the Telos and the Chariots which still seem to be a big deal, along with the Agema. So I hope that City-States get a little bit of a rollback. Over here, the last one we've got is Sorcerer Kings. I didn't see any massively significant changes, and looking at the Mahabharati, I feel like they are quite expensive. You're still at D2, E2. Most Sorcerer Kings regiments are usually just defense 3. Well, these guys are D2 plus shield and hardened, mind you, but these guys, if they're not doing anything with their eminence ability to protect against spellcasting, like if that's not a thing, then their combat potential is not wonderful. So at 160 points, I'm just not really sure if I'd want to take them over a unit which protects your spellcaster a little bit better. So that's a shame. I still think that the Maharaja Warlord with Conflagration is still the way to go. They haven't nerfed Jadu Kavak at all, which is kind of annoying. So you kind of want to go Court of Fire, and you just kind of want to take a bunch of these guys, just like you were before, just the boring old list with all of the brutes. Take the Sorcerer, you take a few goals, you take more brutes, and this is the way you play, right? So the Sorcerer casts the -1 defense, if that's still a thing. You've got these guys gone to the objective, you cast the Ignite on them to make them scoring, if that's still a thing. You're +2 for the purposes of scoring, and then you just keep taking brutes until you've got enough to satisfy your lust for, what's it called? What do you call that thing? Jadukavak, etc., etc. So the Sorcerer, she needs something she can join. So I suppose you'd put more Rajakur in there, or you'd make her bound to the elements. Could put a Mahout in there, but I just don't know if the Mahout's good enough yet. Just generally more Flamecasters is what people are doing. And there you have it. So no overhaul yet. Let's just quickly look at the Wind guys. If I take these people out and put in the Steelheart and the Windborn. So the Windborn, Barrage 4, range 20, AP 1, volley 2 for just 190 points. I don't know. I mean, I keep comparing them to something like the Caryatids, which obviously have fluid formation and the same really good range in the armor piercing 2, if I recall correctly. So I don't know. These guys are quite fast at movement 7, and they still aren't great at close combat. But I suppose they're better than they were before, so that's a plus. And over here, for 180, you can take the Steelheart Gen. Good access to Cleave 2, and with the Sorcerer dumping out the -1 defense from Searing Sandstorm, that's still a pretty good combo. Yeah, not a massive shakeup. I think that there's that rule, Arcane Conduit works a little bit differently now. I think that got changed somewhere, or other regiments that could have taken it, that couldn't have taken it, now have it. But overall, this has just been an initial glimpse at the rules changes. I'm happy that the patch has come out and shaken up the game. I'm happy that Old Dominion has been nerfed and that Wadroon are no longer reliant on slingers but I fear for the game if they are not able to rein in the Thunder Riders and the Chariots, Talos kind of thing. I feel like that's where it's at the moment. I'm not really sure what nasty stuff Spires can pull on us. And also waiting for the new regiment's rules for 100 Kingdoms. That's going to be my jam, playing some Crusaders there. But in the meantime, let's do some play testing. Let's talk about what we're finding from our games and pass that on to Parabellum, and hopefully there'll be a follow-up on it soon.